Hi, everybody. My name is Beth Moncel, and I am the creator of BudgetBytes.com, which is a food blog that focuses on cooking and eating on a budget. I'm going to share a little bit about my story today, how I got here, what I do, how I help people learn how to cook, and unintentionally help people how to eat a little bit healthier. So hopefully you have some questions for me today. If not, I'll just try to give you some helpful information, things that I've learned over the past 11 years of food blogging. So if you're just joining, again, my name is Beth Moncel, and I'm the creator of BudgetBytes.com, which is a food blog focused on cooking on a budget. So I actually probably have a little bit in common with you. I am not a registered dietitian, but I did go to school to become one. And then I graduated in 2007 from Louisiana State University. And after graduation, at that point, I realized I loved the study of dietetics, but I knew that the practice was not for me. I just wasn't thrilled about the idea of working with patients or working in a large scale food service operation. So at that point, I changed my mind. I did not do an internship and just kind of floundered around for a little while deciding what I wanted to do with myself. I ended up going back to school for clinical laboratory science because I did love that medical science aspect of dietetics. But in clinical laboratory science, you don't have to work with patients. So while I was going back to school for that, my student loans went into repayment and I was not making any money. So I had to start really paying close attention to my budget. And I've always been a frugal person to begin with. But I had to find some more ways to cut, and the only category in my budget left was food that had any sort of wiggle room at all. Everything else was completely set. You know, your set bills, you can't do anything about those. So I took a look at my food spending, and having that background in dietetics, I knew I was not going to be okay with just eating ramen noodles every day because that's not healthy, and it would have led to larger costs down the road. So what I did was I started applying the principles that I had learned in the food service management courses in the dietetics program to my own kitchen. And I started tracking all of the costs and doing a breakdown of everything I cooked and spent and tracking it. And it was just so fascinating to me that I'm like, you know what, I need to share this with the world. And I had posted a couple of the recipes I made on my personal Facebook feed, and people were asking me for the recipes. So I thought, you know what, why don't I just put this online somewhere? So I literally Googled how to start a blog and started teaching myself how to create a blog. And that's how Budget Bites was born. This was in 2009, and little did I know, because the Great Recession was starting at that point, there were a lot of other people out there who wanted this information. They wanted to cut their food costs, but they did not want to sacrifice their health in doing so. Um, Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much. So I started blogging and I realized there was a really great need for this. So I almost felt like I needed to keep going, not just for myself, but for everybody else out there who had never had the opportunity to learn how to cook. Because if you think about it, you know, our generation and later, there's really no place for people to learn how to cook. I was lucky. I learned from my mom a little bit. I've learned so much more just by doing over the past 11 years, but I wanted to give people a really easy way to learn step by step how to make really simple dishes that don't cost a lot, that are satisfying, and we're still way healthier than, you know, food that you can get through takeout or a restaurant. Hi, Laura. Nope, you guessed kind of right. I'm not a dietitian, but I do have that background with my first degree. And you can probably tell through my recipes because I do like to add vegetables wherever I can. I try to cook a lot with beans and pulses because not only are they good for you, but they're also the least expensive ingredients in the grocery store. So I work those into a lot of my recipes, and I try to teach people that they're really not that hard to cook. You just have to know how to do it. So I'm trying to make it really approachable. When I started the blog, I knew that because I was not a registered dietitian, that I was not going to specifically address the issue of health. So I don't really ever say, hey, this is healthy for you, or this will be good for this condition, because I don't have the right to say that. I don't have the credentials. So what I did instead is I focused on the budget aspect, but I just kind of like sneakily made the recipes a little bit more healthy. And it was funny because I started getting emails from people saying, I can't believe this. I started cooking from your blog just to save money, and I accidentally lost 50 pounds or 100 pounds. And I realized at that point that telling someone food is healthy for you is not that big of a motivator. It can be for some people, but for most people, it's more of a turnoff. But if you tell them this is going to save you money, that is a way bigger motivator. And a lot of people think that cooking healthy is really expensive, or cooking healthy is going to be like all quinoa and kale, and that can be a turnoff. But if you teach them really simple recipes that have some healthy aspects to it to kind of inch them in that direction. Because if you think about it, a lot of people are coming off of eating all processed foods or all restaurant foods, and they're not going to go straight to eating 100% healthy right away. You kind of need to gradually get them used to real ingredients. So that's kind of what I do with the blog. I don't tell them, hey, this is healthy for you. I tell them, hey, this is really delicious and look how easy it is to make. And it just so happens to be made with beans and fresh vegetables. So it really can be done. The same ingredients that are healthy for you at the grocery store are often the least expensive. Things like carrots and onions and cabbage and bell peppers and beans and rice. All of those things are super inexpensive, and the missing piece is knowing how to prepare them. So that's kind of where I'm trying to bridge that gap. And I never intended to really end up here, even after graduating in dietetics. I kind of thought I had left that part of my life behind, but I just kind of came full circle by coincidence, and I'm really glad that I was able to end up helping people in that way, even though it's not intentional. Hi, Katie. She says one of her favorite recipes is the skillet pineapple barbecued chicken and coconut jasmine rice. I love that one too. I'm so glad you like it. Yeah, and a lot of people do put my recipes on MyFitnessPal. So along the lines of me saying that I was kind of dedicated to not talking about health on the blog for 10 of the first 11 years that I've been blogging. I actually didn't even want to put nutrition statistics on the blog because I just don't feel like paper calculated nutrition facts are at all accurate. I don't want to lead people astray with that. I finally did end up starting to put them on this past January with a big disclaimer, and actually I've hired a dietitian to do all the calculations for me just to make sure they're as accurate as they can be, working with the databases and everything. But I don't want people to be afraid of food because of the numbers that they're seeing on the nutrition label, on the recipe, especially if they're still in that transition phase where they're going from, eating all restaurant food to home cooked. It can be really daunting to all of a sudden look on a recipe and see this number. That's really scary. But if there could be other aspects of the recipe that are really healthy for them. And health is just such a spectrum. I think a lot of people think when you have to start eating healthy, it's an all or nothing deal. But it's such a big spectrum, and you have to start small and kind of work your way to that other end. And I try to teach people that as well, without actually saying healthy. Let's see, does anyone else have any other questions? I guess I'll talk about some of the recipes that really resonate with my readers, because I think that can be really helpful to know what types of things people enjoy. I find that people really, really like one pot recipes. Those are like pasta or rice dishes, or sometimes all vegetable meat, that can all be cooked in one pot so that there's less to clean, there's less to think about. You don't have to be washing, different things on different burners of the stove. And those types of recipes are really easy to add your extra vegetables, like toss in some frozen broccoli or an extra can of beans, something like that, to really up the nutritional content without increasing the price a lot. So a lot of people love those. Trying to think of what else people are really digging right now. So vegetarian and vegan recipes have really been trending a lot lately, not just for people who identify as vegetarian and vegan, but across omnivores, everybody. So a lot of people are trying to really work in more plant-based recipes into their diet, even if they don't eat those 100% of the time. So I've been working a lot with trying to, like, one of the budget strategies I had always used was cutting meat in half and adding back beans or lentils to make up for that um, half pound of meat or so. Because that way you kind of get best of both worlds. You still get all the flavor of the meat, you know, all that protein from the beans and lentils and the meat that's still there, but it really cuts costs a lot. But you can go all the way if you're a vegan or a vegetarian and just swap all of the meat for beans and lentils. And that works quite well for a lot of recipes. So that's a really good option for people who are looking for a little bit more plant-based recipes. I do usually do like black beans or lentils for ground beef, and for chicken, I like to do a cannellini bean or a chickpea. Those work really well. Sarah said she made the red cabbage slaw, and she, oh, I'm glad that you got excited to be here. Um, yes, blended burgers, that's a really another great way. Um, yeah. And then some of the other principles that I worked into my own kitchen to cut costs that I learned from the food service management portion of the dietetics um, program at Louisiana State University is really making sure that you're using up all of your leftover ingredients and nothing goes to waste. And I was actually working at Whole Foods when I started the blog too, and I was working in the prepared foods department, and they were really big on reducing waste. So I really got in the habit of taking stock of my refrigerator and saying, okay, what can I make with what I have here? Or if I was making a recipe and I had like leftover half can of tomato paste or something, making sure that I preserve that in a way that I could use it later, or I found a recipe to make that week that used up the rest of that. So I worked that philosophy into the blog a lot. And we do have a recipe index, I'm sorry, an ingredient index on the blog where people can look up recipes by ingredient. So if they do have a leftover ingredient, they can just go look and say, hey, I need recipes that include tomato paste, and they're all going to be right there, so they can pick whatever they want, make sure they don't have leftover ingredients. And I think that's really helpful too for people who are just starting to learn how to cook at home, because one of the biggest hurdles that I hear from people is that they buy all these ingredients and then they don't end up using them and everything goes away, so they just wasted a ton of money. So I really stress or teach people how to make use of those ingredients so they don't go to waste. And then also, it's a lot like changing your dietary habits. If you're wanting to cook more at home, you really have to start small. Building habits is always better if you take it like a little bit at a time instead of trying to go all in and cooking, you know, all 3 meals, 7 days a week. That will just lead to probably frustration and failure. So you can apply a lot of the principles that you teach people in changing their diet. You can teach those same principles when you're trying to teach them how to cook at home instead of eating out. Let's see, what else do we want to cover today? So I don't know if you guys are interested at all in blogging. I really think there is a great need for more dietitian food bloggers. There are a few that I know of, but if you're interested in doing that, I think it's a really great way to reach people and show people firsthand how to do this and that it's not intimidating. They can do it themselves too. So if you're ever interested in doing something like that, the first thing I think I would suggest doing is taking a course in photography, because as you probably know, people eat with their eyes. So anytime you post a recipe or anything online, whether it's a food blog or on your dietitian's Facebook page, or even just on Instagram, it needs to be visually appealing. Or people are probably just gonna, like, you know, scroll right on by and not even notice it. So food photography is definitely a big piece of that that equation. And learning how, even if you're just using your phone, the iPhone cameras and everything are really good nowadays, and some bloggers do use those exclusively. Take a quick tutorial on like Skillshare or something about food photography. There are so many of them out there. There are even a lot of free ones. There are definitely a lot of YouTubers who teach food photography, so that's an option too. Yes, presentation is, it's difficult. And I'll tell you what makes things look good, what types of foods look good to people. It's got to have color. So if you're doing something all brown, try to add like a little bit of parsley or green onion or something on top to add a little pop of color. Anytime you're doing something like meat or breads, try to get some browning on the edges, because that browning, that caramelization, the Maillard reaction, you might remember from school, that is really visually appealing to people. And when they see that, they can taste it in their mouth. And that's what you want with a food photograph. You want someone to be able to look at that and taste it or even feel it in their mouth. Texture is a really big element of food photography. So adding that parsley on top is not just for color, it's also for texture. Yeah, so color and texture. I like to do a lot of top-down photography because I think it's really easy for people to just see the food. I don't get too artsy with my angles. Some people are really good at that. I'm not so much. So I just go like straight in and try to get the top-down version so people can see what they're eating. Um, so I'm trying to think of what else with food photography. Um, Food videos are fun. There are a lot of ways to make food videos now, even without professional equipment. Well, now most of the social media channels, like even Instagram, have the Reels option where you can string a bunch of clips together and show people exactly what you're making. That's a great way to show people just how quick and easy a recipe is so that they're not intimidated. There is another app that I use sometimes called Jump Rope, and that's another really good way to make really short food videos. Um, and food videos are good, especially if you have a social media channel and you're not a blogger, but just as a dietitian, you have your social media channel and you want to share with people recipes and things. I think it's a good way to get these ideas, these recipes right in front of someone's face. They catch their attention because it's moving as opposed to the other things in their feed. And if you get that really great money shot at the end, that's going to stop people in their tracks and make them say, hey, I want to try that. And guess what? It might be something healthy that they didn't think that they wanted to eat. But if you show them how delicious it looks, they might actually give it a try. Any tutorial recommendations for hands in pans video? So I took a class run by the Blog Village a few years ago, and it was a pretty extensive course. So that one, it's not cheap. I don't know how much they're selling it for now, but that gave me everything I needed to know about how to make hands in pans videos. And I think there are a couple more now. You know what? I might have to come back and put the links in the discussion after the video. But I know some of my colleagues have created classes on that recently. So I will try to come back to the group after the video ends and drop those links in the conversation for you. But there are a lot of them out there, and you can probably even find some on YouTube for free right now. But it's not as confusing as it sounds. Like I usually have, I am using professional camera equipment, but you can use your phone. But I put one facing down over the food, and then I put one on the side, and I'm recording both at the same time. That way, if one angle is not very good, I can switch to the other angle during editing and still get the shot. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? Any questions about blogging or writing food related content, anything like that? Like I was saying earlier, I really do think there is a lot of space in the food blogging world for dietitians. And even like working with brands. I know a lot of bloggers work with brands on sponsored content, and I think there is a lot of room for dietitians to do that as well. So I think that would be interesting. Do you adapt any SNAP USDA recipes? So I don't know, I didn't know that they have any recipes themselves, but I did do the SNAP challenge. Oh, it was quite a while ago now. I'm trying to think. 2014, I think. I did the SNAP challenge, and that was such a great, I don't want to say success because it sounds wrong, but it was such an enriching experience for both me and my readers. I saved all of the Snap Challenge blog posts I did in a category. But what I did was I tried to eat on $4.50 a day, and that was the average at that time of SNAP benefits per person. So I just did what I always did. I logged everything that I ate and I broke down the cost and I compared the paper breakdown of costs and ingredients to my weekly receipts. So you can see the comparison of both, and it usually ended up evening out. Like on your receipt, you're buying whole containers of, I don't know, like olive oil or whatever. But in your recipes, when you're calculating, you're only calculating the cost of, 2 tablespoons olive oil. Anyway, so I compared those costs so people could see, and it was so insightful because it really taught me how taxing it is on every aspect of your life when you don't have enough money for food. um, it's taxing socially because you can't really go out and socialize like you would normally. When you get hungry, all of your willpower and reasoning just goes out the window, and your body wants the most calorie dense item you can get, which is probably going to be cheap chips and soda. And it just really made me a lot less judgmental about what I see people buying. And I feel like that's a lesson a lot of people could use. Um, but and it really just made me stretch my creativity as far as making those dollars stretch. So I did end up coming up with some pretty cool recipes during that time. But I did a weekly recap during the Snap Challenge. And at the end of the recap, after I went through all the cost breakdowns and what I cooked and ate that week, I would do a reflection about how I felt and the experience, and like even just how much more stressful grocery shopping is, because you're sitting there with your calculator every time you put something in your cart. You have to make sure it all adds up, and if you accidentally hit the wrong button and your total's gone, then you got to start over. And just really having to consider every single item you put in your cart because you're calculating down to the penny, is just a totally different experience, and something that I think a lot of people have not experienced and don't really fully understand the gravity of. So yeah, the Snap Challenge was really great. Let me see if some other questions popped up here. Sarah asks, where do I get the inspiration for new recipes? And I get them from all over. Like, working in the food space, you have food in your face all the time. So whether it be a social media feed where I see an ingredient combination that I'm like, oh, I bet those flavors would be great together, or a new cooking technique that I've never used before, and then I might want to use that with some different flavors. Sometimes it's from restaurants when I go out to eat. A lot of times it's from convenience foods that I see at the grocery store, like things in the freezer aisle that's, like already done for you. I'm like, well, I could make that for a lot less and it wouldn't take that much money or that much work to do. So then I try to recreate that at home. And those types of recipes are usually pretty popular because, if it's being sold in the freezer section, it's probably already been vetted for consumer demand. And so if I show someone how to do something at home instead of spending 3 times as much to get it already prepared, people really enjoy those. So yeah, just all over. And a lot of times it's just like, what am I craving that week? And that leads my creativity. And I find that those recipes are usually the most successful because it's like, really what I'm feeling at the moment. And I feel like I can make it work better if it's something that I feel like eating. Um, Thank you for saying that the blog is beneficial for WIC clients. It's hard because budget is not universal. It's a subjective term, and there are a lot of different budget ranges. So I try to make recipes that are a full range, from people who are all the way down on that Snap Challenge level of food spending to people who are like um, maybe they're a double income home, but they're still trying to watch their budget, because there are a lot of people like that too. So I always just try to like make sure people understand that not every recipe is going to fit in everybody's budget. And sometimes it's just budget because it's a lot less expensive than it would be if you were eating that meal out. So all of those things count to me as a budget recipe. Laura asks if I would ever consider doing the Snap Challenge again. I thought about it, but ultimately I decided not to because of 2 reasons. I am a very private person, and I found that doing those challenges, I also did a vegetarian challenge at one point, where I'm putting everything I eat on the internet. and really divulging that much about my life is very uncomfortable for me, because then you invite a lot of criticism about your eating habits. A lot of people, like to tell you if you're eating too much, not enough, things like that. And having hundreds of thousands of people every day telling you their opinion of your life is very stressful. Um, and then just because of the way the blog is run now, it's more of a business than it is just a log of my life. I can't really separate. Um, how do I put this? I have to cook a lot more for the blog than I ever would for myself, just to keep the momentum going. So I wouldn't be able to like stop and just like buy stuff for myself to eat and then log that. And then plus I live with my boyfriend now. So I wouldn't be able to just be like, hey, this is my food. You have to eat on your own for the next month while I'm doing this challenge. So no, I haven't done it again, but I'm glad the posts are still up there for anyone to read. Like I said, it was one of the most valuable experiences I've ever had in my life. So I don't know. I encourage everyone else to try it at least once, especially if you're working with a food insecure community that are using food stamps, just so you can really understand what they're going through. Just even try it for a week, if you can, just to kind of see where they're coming from and where you can help. I think that would be a great idea. Let's see, let me make sure there's nothing else I want to cover before we wrap up. We've got about 4 minutes left. Do you guys have any questions about eating healthy on a budget? Because I know that's always a topic everywhere, whether you're talking to a dietitian or just anywhere. I don't know if you guys really feel like it's easy, or if you have a hard time communicating with your clients about how easy it is. But yeah, one of the things I really try to drive home with the whole eating healthy on a budget thing is that kind of stay away from like the fad ingredients. I think that a lot of people think eating healthy is all those things like acai berries, the superfoods that are really being heavily promoted in the media or among influencers, things like that. And the regular food that is also packed with nutrients just gets overlooked. Things like before that I mentioned, like cabbage and carrots and bell peppers and zucchini, and all of those things are going to be like $1.50 or less per pound, and they're super nutritious. And so even just working one or two extra vegetables into a meal every day can really make a huge impact on your health, without increasing your costs a lot. You don't have to go make super expensive fancy salads. You can just saute up a zucchini and add that to your dinner plate, and that's going to help a lot. And as you do that, your tastes change, and over time you start craving those healthier things. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be a one-time big cost where they go out and they stock their kitchen with everything healthy, or buy all of their cooking equipment at once. If you're trying to convince someone to start cooking more at home, just taking it one step at a time. I always tell people start with one recipe a week, and then once they get comfortable doing that, move up to 2 recipes per week. And that way, not only are they not buying a bunch of groceries at once and then failing, they're also not buying a bunch of kitchen equipment at once and then never using again. You build up a little bit at a time, so the costs spread out over a few months, and then you get to learn what you like and what's going to work for you, because it truly is different for every person's taste and lifestyle. Okay, Elise asks if you could give a few super quick survival tools for budgeting with someone getting started. What would they be? In the hospital, a time frame for education is super short, so I'm always struggling to give quick ideas to start. Okay, so I have a blog post called The Budget Biting Principles, and it's just 6 things that I made sure I do every time. So one of them is like checking your sales flyer. There's a really great mobile app now called Flip, F-L-I-P-P, that lets you look at all the grocery store sales flyers in your area all in one place. So before you go shopping, you can see what's on sale in your area and then choose your recipes based on that. And then I always shop my kitchen before I shop at the grocery store. So after I've picked out the recipes, or even before I pick out the recipes, I see what I have on hand that needs to be used up, pick recipes that use those ingredients. So I'm making sure everything gets used up and I'm not buying extra stuff when I already have things at home. After you make your grocery list, double check everything in your kitchen so that you're not buying double of something you already have, and you're not forgetting some staple ingredients that you think you're stocked up on and you're not. And then explore different grocery stores in your area. A lot of times, like if you're in a metropolitan area, you probably have some international grocery stores, and those can be absolutely amazing for buying fresh produce for really cheap prices. And then if you ever want specialty ingredients like certain spices and things, they're going to be way less expensive. Oftentimes, you're going to get like beans and grains really inexpensively at these stores too. And then if you have any sort of like farmers market in your area, those can be less expensive. Not always, it just depends on what kind of farmers market you have. And then just the way you design your recipes is going to make a big difference. So limiting the amount of the expensive ingredients, things like meats, nuts, cheeses, and bulking up your recipes with things that are inexpensive. And those inexpensive ingredients don't have to be unhealthy. It could be something like cabbage, which is a great bulker, I find, for recipes. Super healthy, inexpensive. It could be rice, it could be beans, it could be whole wheat pasta, things like that. And just making sure your ratios in the recipes are not out of whack. You're not adding like a pound of cheese to your recipe because that's going to be expensive and probably unhealthy. So things like that. Any suggestions for teaching college students to eat healthy on a budget? I also have a roundup for easy recipes for college students. Now, this is probably not going to be for people living in a dorm because I don't think they're allowed to have too much cooking equipment. But people living maybe on in an apartment in college, I do have some really simple recipes. And when I was in college, what I focused on was batch cooking. So I would make a batch of chili, a batch of pasta, divide it up into single portions, keep those in your freezer. So then when you have a really busy day, you're studying all day, you don't have time to cook, you can just grab a piece, a portion out of your freezer and reheat it when you need it. You have a really great home cooked meal, probably way healthier than going out to McDonald's or whatever. And it's saving you both time and money because you're cooking once and you're eating 6 or 7 times, however many portions are in that recipe. And I found that to be the most efficient way for me to save money and time while I was in college. And then also focusing on frozen vegetables. It's probably good for everybody, but it was especially good for me in college because if you have your freezer stocked with frozen vegetables, you don't need to do nearly as much planning because you're not fighting against the clock with the vegetables going bad. And you can just literally toss them into any recipe. You've got, like, I always kept frozen broccoli, spinach, and peas. And those three can be put into a soup, they can be put into a pasta, they can be put into a casserole, like whatever I was cooking. I'm like, can I add some more vegetables? Yes, I can. I've got some in the freezer. So that's a really great thing for college students as well. So we're a couple minutes over. Hopefully no one else has any other questions. If you do, you can pop it in there right now. If not, thank you guys for having me on the Facebook Live today. Again, if you're just joining halfway through, my name is Beth Moncel. I am the creator of budgetbytes.com, which is a website that focuses on cooking on a budget, and I also teach people how to cook with step-by-step tutorials. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, and all the links to socials are on budgetbytes.com. That's BYTES. And I also have a cookbook that was published in 2014. I do offer some meal plans for purchase on our website. So those are pretty cool. I don't know if they'd help with your clients or not. And then I also have a mobile app. So you can check all of that out. They're all linked on budgetbytes.com. Thank you guys so much. It's great to talk to a group of dietitians who care about the same things I do. Thanks, guys. Bye.